Hi, all. Here we are back again. And I'd like to continue what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. The first thing I want to say to you is if you are not really serious, this is not for you. We have a proven methodology that requires attention and work. And as I've explored with you, the key is that we have a program that works, but the program only works if you work the program. One of the biggest problems that I find is that people react to the fact that it is hard work. And secondly, because it requires hard work, people have to invest of themselves. And we live in a society which has a problem with that. Now, I've gone through with you the last few weeks, the psychological aspects of the program. And now I want to top it off. And as you've been able to see, the title for tonight is It's Not Your Fault. Interesting title. Now, if it's not your fault, then what are we doing? And it means you have choices to make. And that's where I want to start with you. Choice number one, be passive and accept. There are so many of you who say, I want to lose weight, but take no action whatsoever. Oh, I apologize. I hear a tremendous amount of excuses and complaining. Now, if it's not your fault, why are you making an excuse? And where in your lifetime have you found that complaining was meaningful? The second choice, be proactive and change your world. One of the things that I find very, very interesting is that there are scientific studies that show that 80% of your height and weight is genetic. And what's interesting, I've never heard anyone go on a program to gain height. Although many people Most of us here think that losing weight is not a proper position to take. So let me break it down for you. About 25 to 30% of that population is genetically predisposed to being skinny, to being thin. Now you notice that leaves about 70% of the people who have a choice to be proactive. 2/3 of the population have choices and can deal with it. It takes hard work. It takes behavioral change. And it means being proactive and not passive. Sitting here and listening to me is betwixt and between. Because if you don't take and use what I'm offering, then it's valueless. What's very interesting is I had a woman I was talking to today. She started the program about 3 months ago. This is a woman who has been heavy for most of her life. And she's tried everything. And that's what made her very interesting for me. She's tried all kinds of dieting. She's tried pills. She's tried surgery. She lost quite a lot of weight in surgery, gained it all back. She's done many different diets. In fact, because of her extreme obesity, insurance covered weight loss, and she did was actually forced by the insurance company to pick a couple weight loss programs. And she went on medication before she came to me. And the medication she was on seemed to be helpful because she was losing weight on a regular basis. And then life got a little hectic. And all of a sudden, she put on 12 pounds. She came to see me, and she said the reason she came to see me is that she had found herself standing in front of the cabinet, gazing at food. She then discovered, and this is very interesting, that she had forgotten to take her medication And her mind kept refocusing on putting something in her mouth. What she said to me is very, very interesting. She said, Dr. Schwartz, one of the things that I realize, and I'd never known it before, is that when they put me on medication, and the medication was helpful, no question. There were some side effects, but I can live with those. But when they put me on medication, they actually expect me to stay on the medication for the rest of my life. Because when I went off the medication, my symptoms returned. She's been on the program for a few weeks now. She's lost weight. The important thing, and this is something I focus on, is the fact that the regimen that we set up, and she's on a higher weight program because she weighs over 300 pounds. The higher weight program requires a different food component. She has lost every single week. She's sleeping better. And she says to me, as long as I stay hydrated, and that's hard because I forget, I'm amazed that my cravings are gone. They're not there. I'm sleeping better. And Dr. Schwartz, will this continue? My answer to her was, I told you when we started that we're going to change your life. I misspoke. There will be changes in your life, but you're the one who's going to make the changes because you've made yourself important enough to make those changes. Now, when I say it's not your fault, what I'm basically saying is there's a conspiracy out there. And that conspiracy lies in wait because every single thing that you do seems to revolve around food. We've talked about the fact that we can take drugs and alcohol out of your life, but we can never take food out of your life. We've talked about the fact that food gives you comfort. And with the stresses and pressures that we have to deal with, that's a huge job because we are basically caught up in trying to ease the stress, the pressure, the tension, the anxiety, the fear, the issues of health, the circumstances that we live in, high gas prices, high food prices, pandemic. We're faced with all of this. And the one thing you know and I know, it may be transitory. It may be for the moment. But the temptations are there. And not only that, But the food companies, although they do respond to public pressure, the food companies keep coming up with easy ways of taking things to dissipate our hunger. And the biggest problem with those, I call them processed foods, is that they remove the water and the fiber. And water and fiber fill you up. These energy bars, as they call them, or protein bars or whatever, do give you quick energy. But they also, because they are digested in the way in which they are, they're digested very quickly. And once you get into them, you begin to notice that you're putting on weight as well. Now, what's the issue here, and what is it that we need to do? The issue here is you made a commitment, and in that commitment, what you said is, I am important enough to focus on me so that I will be taken care of. For you to take care of you, you have to make yourself important enough to be taken care of. You have to agree that you're worth it, and that's a problem. Because many of you are basically in circumstances where you're actually helping other people or involved with other people, and you're taking care of them. And in the process of taking care of them, and I hear the complaints all the time, Dr. Schwartz, I don't have the time to do the things that I need to do to take care of myself. Interesting. When I press further, what I hear is the feedback that they get from helping other people is rewarding. They get acknowledgement, etc. And because situations and circumstances are such, it's the only acknowledgement they get that makes them feel worthy. And so they help other people because they get positive feedback over that and situations and circumstances, and they're able to deny, to completely block out the fact that they're not taking care of themselves. Now, in order for us to move ahead, what we need to do is to adopt a habit of self-care, as opposed to focusing on avoiding bad habits. If we don't proactively choose behaviors that help us move forward, that make us self-aware, that say, I'm important enough for me to do something about this. If that doesn't happen, then where is the motivation for you? Now, one of the things you've heard me say, beyond the fact that this conspiracy out there is there, that resists the taking care of yourself in order to lose weight. The conspiracy is there to help you get well. There are all kinds of medical issues involved with overweight. And there are all kinds of medicines available to help you control those diseases, side effects of overweight. It doesn't, in the society in which we live, it doesn't in our society make sense to be able to do natural kinds of things, to slow down, take care of ourselves so that we're better able to deal with the environment for us to stay healthy, as opposed to taking the shortcuts. Now, I want to talk about me for a minute. As many of you know, I spent most of the winter up here in New Jersey, down in Florida. Somewhere around December, I noticed that my middle was expanding. And I tend not to go on the scale, but I did. And I had blossomed. And I say that with an ironic smile, to almost 240 pounds. I knew I had to do something about it. I had neglected myself. The things that I was doing were such that I was doing things to comfort myself. But I realized that I couldn't do the program the way the program was at that time structured and organized. One of the outgrowths is what we call the Flex program. And here's what I want you to know. I made a decision. I was going to stay on the program 2 days a week, and I would do milk days on those 2 days. And I would alter my regimen the other 5 days. I also extended my hours. Instead of 12 to 6, for the most part, I extended those hours 12 to 8. And here's what I want you to know. From December 24th to sometime late in May, early in June, I'm not exactly certain, I lost 38 pounds. I think I look pretty good. I took control of my life, but I didn't give up my life. You have the decision as to how important you are. But what you have to understand is that if you can't see your way of taking care of yourself, then the issues are much deeper. And here is something you need to understand. One of the keys to my success was constantly, and I mean, I don't know how many times each day, I was talking to people. Most of them were people doing the AccuWeight program and telling them what it is that I was doing. I was sharing with them my thoughts, my feelings, my rationales, my behavior. And I was asking them about their thoughts, and they were asking me about mine and what it is I was thinking. How did I feel about this? And how did I feel about that? And it was in those conversations, maybe because I'm Dr. Schwartz, I got almost no negativity. What I got from some was, how do you do it? How do you manage to do it? How do you stick to it? And my answer is the one that I have been talking about with you. You have to be proactive. You know what's going on. Tell me you're not tempted. Tell me the pressures, the issues of the pandemic, the being locked in, not going out to eat, being secluded, being isolated, that all of these kinds of things have not caused you to increase the pressures and issues on yourself, the temptations, and you've put on what we call here the pound-demic. What made the difference is, as I shared with other people, when I confessed my own weaknesses, I learned something very interesting in the stuff I've been talking about as to why I was so in love with the Alcoholics Anonymous program. Number one, I would say 90% of the people that I were talking to were like me. Food was a problem. I love food. And when I eat what I like to eat. But I knew I would have to change my behavior. And telling people that I had changed my behavior, that I found it difficult because the old habits were there in the back of my head, and that I didn't ignore. And this is the important thing. All of those pressures were there. I have nothing to do with those pressures. They're part of life. They make demands on me. I had to deal with them. And the only difference between most of you and I is I went to a different school. So you call me doctor. You went to a different school, you're not a doctor. The rest of my life is just like yours. All the pressures and tensions, the issues of family and structure and business, etc., are there. And I had the added issue Remember, I was, and still am to some extent, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and particularly when I get tired, the dyslexia and the disorganization shows up. The difference is I did not wait. The moment I became aware of what was going on, I proactively addressed the situation. So that's discussion we've had how many times about using the candies like the Tic Tacs. I go through, I don't know how many little packets. I am using them all the time. Now I'm going to give you my rationale. It's very simple. I know that the pressures are going to cause me to compromise and give in. I used to test it. How long can I go before I break down and give in? I will control my action when I stray from the program. And I did that. And I suffered guilt and shame because I was weak and helpless. You know something? I haven't met very many people, and I suspect they don't exist in the world. There aren't very many people who are strong enough to never worry about giving in. Well, I decided that I didn't want to give in. Knowing that I would, I don't want to deal with that. And it's very, very interesting. The reason I go through as many packages of Tic Tacs as I do is because of the fact that I recognized something very interesting. It took me about a month. Popping Tic Tacs, not waiting, immediately putting them in my mouth, and I don't use 3, I use 4, sometimes I use 5. Because I know that the instant I put those Tic Tacs in my mouth, I don't have a problem any longer. And that's the wonderful part. It's not a weakness. I don't want to deal with it. You and I know, should I, shouldn't I, can I, will I, what will happen, will I feel guilty, only can I do a little bit, can I do a lot, maybe I'll put it off, I'll do it tonight. I used to go through that on a constant basis. And then I realized something inside me. I didn't like me when I did what I did because of the fact that it made me feel helpless and powerless. I knew it was coming. The storm was coming. I should put up the shutters. I should move things out of the way. But I didn't do it. And then the storm would come and I would complain about the devastation. And I suddenly realized I knew the storm was coming. I would be tempted. The pressures of my life were such that they were coming, and I would congratulate myself because I didn't do it this time, and then I'd berate myself because I broke down. But the moment I put those Tic Tacs in my mouth, and I do it immediately now, I realize it's what I really want, and I like the me who does it because he's put away all of the issues. It's not my fault. I can't live without food. The society is rigged against me. I haven't got time to eat, so we go to fast food. And we know what processed food does for us. And we know all the issues of disease, etc. But it makes no difference. And it makes no difference because I don't know about you, but when I eat, particularly when there's pressure and tension, and now I eat differently, there's no argument there, but I still get peace and comfort when I eat. And why don't you? And the answer is you can't do it alone. What saved me was the fact that I was sharing with other people. The fact that I knew when I put the Tic Tacs in my mouth, number one, I was listening to that voice. That voice said, I want. And you want to know something? I wanted as well. Not only did the voice want, but I wanted what the voice wanted as well. I don't know about you, but I'll bet you wanted as well. I was unhappy about the fact that I was putting on weight. And I made all kinds of excuses for it. And I did things that I didn't like. I don't have to do that anymore. Number one, the voice says, I want. And I say to the voice, okay, I'm going to give you Tic Tacs. Now, I don't know about you, but at the beginning, the voice said, I don't want Tic Tacs. And I said, I'm the boss. Here are the Tic Tacs. The voice didn't like it. But the voice has no power. I'm the one with the power. So by putting the Tic Tacs in my mouth, I took my power back. And so number one, I gave the voice something. I paid attention to it. I was proactive. I acknowledged the fact that what the voice wanted, whatever that thing was, part of me wanted it as well. There was no question about that. My issue was the issue of weight. So number one, I retrained that voice. Number two, I took away all of my own ambivalence. I couldn't equivocate, maybe a little bit, maybe, because as soon as I put those Tic Tacs in my mouth, the flavor filled my mouth, and I recognized that even if I tried to override, the combination of the tastes for the moment would be terrible, and I'd spit it out. We've talked about me and the spitting out, and that's a story for another day. But the key here is I didn't have the argument, the constant pressure that I didn't want to listen to. I'm tired, so I gave in. I'm stressed, so I gave in. I'm sleepy, so I gave in. I'm fatigued, so I gave in. There is no giving in. I give myself the Tic Tacs. I'm done. For 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it makes no difference because that's my new habit. Now, the key here is I'm sharing. That's one of the big things that I loved about Alcoholics Anonymous. Every single person that goes into a meeting looks around that room and realizes that every single person there has the same issue that they have. All of them are fallible, have the same weaknesses. Number two, and this is important, no secret. I don't have to hide. Whoever you are, whatever your life circumstances are, you've got the same weakness I have. I've got the same weakness you have. And you're here because you had the courage, and I'm here because I had the courage to share it with you. And it's in the sharing, because you have thoughts and ideas about things that can be helpful to me, and I have thoughts and ideas that can be helpful to you. Number two, one of the things in those meetings is you have a structure, and you're verbalizing. You're not stuffing it down. You're keeping it in. And when you verbalize and share with other people, the pressure, the energy that it takes to stuff it in and not let it out doesn't fatigue you. Number three, and this is important, the key is that we interact. And by our interaction, we recognize we have value. How many of you, if you stop and recognize that when you take control, how it feels and how you feel about the fact that for that moment, you don't feel powerless and helpless, which is a terrible place to be. That you're not making believe that you're valuable, not that you shouldn't help other people, but helping people at your own expense to make yourself perceived as valuable. We need to do this together. These moments on Monday nights, etc., that I speak with you, I'm here because I want to be your Sherpa guide. I want to help you through this. But I can't help you through this unless we grow together. It's very difficult. The other day I was sitting in a outdoor cafe, and it was the most interesting thing. 4 people sat down. I didn't go in. I sat outside. I was with my wife. 4 people sat down at the table next to me. And I looked at my wife and I started to smile. And she said, "I know what you're going to say." I said, "What was I going to say?" That the moment the 4 of them sat down, each of them took out their phones. They didn't talk with each other. They were doing whatever they were doing on their phones. We don't talk to each other anymore. I'm right Therefore, you're got to be wrong. And it's as simple as that. My being right in my mind doesn't mean that you could also possibly have thoughts and ideas that can enhance my position or enhance your position. So if it's not your fault, you can be helpless and powerless and passive and do nothing. Or we can take these podcasts and build upon them. I am going to set out sort of like a curriculum. I want you to learn about you. I want you to recognize the power that you have, the value that you have. The issue of losing weight may be an important kind of thing. The bigger problem is the concern and fear that you're not able to accomplish it, or that you don't accomplish it. And what you do in the process of not accomplishing it is stunt your own growth. When you take charge of your life, you begin to like yourself better. I've been in situations this last couple of weeks outside of the program where there has been turmoil, disrespect. And one of the things that I noticed is the fact that there is no discussion anymore. It's my side or your side. There is nothing else. But when people begin to take control of their lives, they begin to like themselves better. When you begin to like yourself better, you look at your own behavior, because if your behavior cannot be approved of by you, that feeling of having control is rattled. And so you tend to alter your behavior in order to maintain that feeling. It grows because now when I'm dealing with someone else, and I might treat them in a lesser manner, I find I'm not happy with me treating them in a lesser manner. And so I try to find an alternative behavior so that I can deal, but like myself better. That person, over a period of time, if it's something that is going to be interactive, begins to recognize that I'm treating them differently. It gets their attention. They are who they are, but I was treating them the way I was because of the reaction I was getting from them. But now their reaction is beginning to change because they don't want me to stop treating them the way I'm now treating them. It's time for us to be proactive. I'm going to set out a curriculum. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. And here is the most important thing. You have a resistance to sharing. It's irrelevant what you share. The first thing you need to understand, you cannot do this alone. And here I'm going to fall back. And you know, I am strongly a believer in the Old Testament. And I believe in a higher power. So here is what I want you to understand from my perspective. And I said you can't do it alone. This higher power created a human being. One. There was only Adam. And when I read that text, it took Adam, I don't know how long a time, to discover that he was an entity that had no partner. Every other creature had a partner. And so a partner was created. And things moved on from there. We need to be partners. We need to support each other. And when we support each other, and we feel supported because we are there for each other, the whole perspective in the world changes. In your world changes. Now, I have, if I can find them, here we go. I have some questions before we shut down. I'm leaving for vacation in 3 weeks. Should I start phase 2 now so I'm ready? The answer is no. You're not going on vacation for 3 weeks, and you've made a decision. The decision is, 1, I'm going to do whatever I do. 2, I'm going to stick with the program. Or 3, I'm going to do a modified program. None of that is going to take place for 3 weeks. Why would you change now? Why would you give up the opportunity of continuing on your weight loss journey now? So the answer is, make a choice. Let's get there. Let's implement the program when you go. I heard there is a support group. Where can I find it? I'm just going to simply say the support group is terrific because you learn and grow. You hear things that you otherwise would not. You get advice, you get suggestions, and you recognize that other people have problems and that you're not alone. What I suggest you do, it's very simple. Get on your computer, register, go to youraculife.com/community. You're now part of a group. You can talk, you can interact, you can ask questions. You can be quiet and just listen to what other people have to say. It helps you grow. It makes you recognize you're not alone. And it moves you closer to having a better life. Is there a limit on how many Tic Tacs I can consume? The answer is no. There is no limit. The key here is to acknowledge and recognize, and this is the important thing, what you're doing. When I take a Tic Tac, 4 or 5, and I put them in my mouth, I'm acknowledging I'm human. I'm acknowledging I'm fallible. I'm acknowledging I'm not perfect. I'm acknowledging that I'm ambivalent about breaking down, but I really want to lose the weight and I don't want to break down, but I don't want to go through this speech I just gave you. So by putting the Tic Tacs in my mouth, it's over and done with. But it's not finished, because 5 minutes later, it can start again. And since Tic Tacs have meaningfully no calories, I can do it every 5 minutes. I can do it every 10 minutes. And it will work every single time. And every single time it works, I'm a little prouder of me because it says I'm worth it. It says, and because I like my body a heck of a lot better now than I did 6 months ago. And these Tic Tacs were a really good support for me. Last question. Can I use lactate milk? And the answer is, as long as it's the red label and it doesn't have to be Lactaid, which is a name brand, it has to be lactose free. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you next week. And remember something else. It's not your fault.